Welcome. Welcome back, I hope. And thank you. Thank you for continuing on this journey. It feels very good every week to say welcome and welcome back. But this week, I feel even more grateful than usual for your presence, for this community, and for our time together to breathe, to reflect, to try to clear our minds of the concerns and preoccupations with which we have been engaged. And in the aftermath of our mini retreat from the world, to hopefully feel lighter, less burdened, or at least strengthened in our efforts to deal with our burdens, possibly inclined to let go of a worry or two, and to be re-energized, focused, maybe even inspired by something from our tradition that allows us to look at a problem or circumstance through a different lens, with another tool for understanding and for reacting with wisdom, compassion, and insight. This week, I confess I am struggling, as I know we all are. I want to convey some ultimate wisdom that will help us to navigate this impossible time. I want to be able to speak words of prophecy that will set us on a clear path, that will uncover the way forward, the path to a renewed vision of what we believe about our country and our fellow citizens. But none of us has that ability or that gift. I could quote any number of verses, instructions, exhortations, or commandments from our Torah and sacred texts. But right at this moment, love your neighbor as yourself may be sublime and may be exactly where we will end up if we have any hope of creating and living in a civilized world. But it's not where I am on this day, at this moment, as I breathe in and out. And that is the problem. I am not quite sure where I am, which leads me to believe that we may all be struggling with where we are mentally, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. I know that I am by turns horrified, incredulous, enraged, despondent, optimistic, fearful, hopeful, cynical, and positive, to name a few of the states of mind and heart I have been regularly experiencing in just these last several days. In recognition of this unsettled and unsettling time, I thought I would share with you some of the thoughts, writings, reactions from our tradition, of my own and of colleagues that I have found helpful in the last week. I have sought to avoid anything that struck me as pat, as a platitude, as trite, banal, or trivial. So let us prepare to breathe and to reflect on this moment in our lives and in our history. Let us sit comfortably, but with attentiveness, our hands and our feet comfortably placed, our feet on the ground, both feet on the ground, our hands in our laps, and our eyes, as I have already done. I like to close mine. I know some of you might like to just focus softly on something in the distance. Let us take that first deep, full breath. Let us feel it. Let us relish it. Let us yawn a bit if we need. And let us let it go. And let us take another. I'm just double checking something. Let us take that full, deep, wonderful breath. Hold it for a moment of gratitude. And maybe even blow it out. Let us breathe in our gratitude for the freedom we enjoy at this moment, even in its pandemic-restricted state. We breathe in. And let us breathe out for these moments our fears for its endurance, its sustainability. Let us breathe in our belief in the American experiment. Breathe it in deeply. And let us breathe out the designs of those who do not understand the fragility, the tenuousness, the sanctity of what we have. Let us breathe in the imperfections of our country. And let us breathe out the idea that we cannot fix those imperfections. We breathe them in, and we breathe them out. As I most always do, I have found it instructive and even serendipitous that this last week's Torah portion, the first in the book of Exodus, brings us into Egypt, where we are at the mercy of a new Pharaoh, one who disregards precedent, who has no respect for the value of human life, who seeks to bend everything to his will, and who causes his own people to suffer for his ambitions, while enslaving the stranger in his midst, which in this case means the Hebrews. His tyrannical impulses create a reign of terror in which decency must be hidden, and the only way to resist is through subterfuge and secrecy. This Pharaoh, who first dehumanized our ancestors, then enslaved them, and then set about methodically killing all of the male children, was the first in our history to treat the Jews in his realm in this way, but was certainly not the last. There is a terrible cost to surviving tyrants, and the fact that we have in the past is not particularly comforting, but may be helpful to put our current reality into perspective. While it is unprecedented and unacceptable in this country, we have known far worse. Let us breathe in again our current freedom. And let us breathe out the danger of tyrannical rule. Let us breathe in the ideals that we cherish and that we hold dear. And let us breathe out in this moment the designs of those who would trample upon them. Let us breathe in a new understanding of our responsibility to safeguard every freedom we enjoy. And let us breathe out every impulse to take for granted the cherished gifts of our lives, all of the gifts of our lives. We breathe in those gifts and breathe out our taking them for granted. We breathe in our freedoms and breathe out any taking for granted, any impulse to trample them. Another insight from this week's Torah portion concerns Miriam, who, as you may remember, stands at a distance to see what will become of her brother Moses, whom she has placed in the Nile River in a basket, in the desperate hope that somehow he might survive. As an aside, I am reminded of the boat people of every generation who have taken to the seas in order to escape oppression of every kind, and all of those who came to the shores of this country in boats of every size and shape, risking everything for a dream of liberty and a better life. I am also painfully aware that there is another story of those who came by boat in chains to this country. That story is part of our current situation and must be addressed as intrinsic to the foundational narrative of this country. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, one of the great commentators of our tradition, reads the verse about Miriam standing at a distance as having a different meaning. That distance, merahok, is a spiritual choice in his interpretation. A spiritual choice to distance momentarily from worldly responsibility to take care of the God connection, to take care of her spiritual life. This suggests to us that we might similarly use this time of chaos and confusion to look inward, to tend to our inner spiritual, if you will, selves. This is an opportunity to address our reeling, anxious souls with compassion and kindness, with a withdrawal that could lead us to return with a greater resolve and with a focus for our energies, our concerns, and even our fears. We might retreat, merachok, to a distance, to take care of our inner lives. So let us breathe in a bit of that distance from the world that is so much with us. And let us breathe out the overwhelming sense of vulnerability and ineffectiveness. Let us breathe in concern and care for our battered and bruised souls. And let us breathe out our estrangement, our enragement, our profound disappointment and disillusionment. Breathe in a brief withdrawal from the world. And breathe out the negatives that continuously beat us up inside. I would share with you as well a couple of short thoughts that I found intriguing, if not completely understandable. Moshe Habertal, a contemporary Israeli rabbi, is quoted as saying, "Any explanation of evil leads to more evil." While there are no doubt any number of interpretations of this somewhat mysterious idea, my initial suggestion would be that the very discussion of evil renders it real and therefore gives it a life and a power we would rather deny. Rabbi David Hartman, Zichrono Livracha, the founder of the Hartman Institute, reminds us of the Talmudic phrase, "a heart of many chambers," which suggests the heart might include a chamber for the existence of evil. Given that formulation, what does it say about the nature of evil, that it, like good, emerges from the heart? Perhaps it is enough just to sit with these ideas. They are provocative and curious, intriguing and compelling. We do not have to answer the questions that they raise. It may be just enough to sit with them, to turn them over, to breathe them in and breathe them out again. So we breathe in. Any explanation of evil leads to more evil. And we breathe out. Any explanation of evil leads to more evil. And we breathe in a heart of many chambers. And we breathe out a heart of many chambers. Finally, I would share with you some thoughts from a colleague of mine, Rabbi Barbara Penzner, who is the sister of our member and past president, Michael Penzner. And this is with her permission. She wrote this week, in part, "For me, the day of the violent assault on our government, was reminiscent of 9/11, with shock over the realization that, quote, it can happen here, end quote. Fear of further attacks to come, and anger at the individuals and the circumstances that brought this destruction about. Our people's historical memory and our ancient texts offer guidance in times of uncertainty and turmoil. Korban, destruction, resides in the Jewish memory like glowing embers, reminders of temples burned to the ground, Jewish lives lost, and masses sent into exile. We cannot succumb to fear, but we must also be vigilant in recognizing the hatred that was ignited over and over into crusades, the Inquisition, the Nuremberg laws, and yes, the Shoah. And that is just the Jewish memory of hatred unleashed. And yet, Jews are survivors of survivors of survivors. The first story of our survival as a people begins with this week's portion, Shemot, the Exodus from Egypt, is a triumphant reminder of our capacity to resist, to cry out, to organize, and to achieve redemption. We recall that event in daily prayers and in the spectacle of the Passover Seder as we remember our great privilege and continue to fight to liberate all who are oppressed. Sadly, America is some distance from crossing the Red Sea and seeing the end of a pharaoh. The darkness of this moment is akin to the night of the 10th plague in Egypt. Before the Israelites could reach the other shore of the sea and celebrate their freedom, they began their Passover meal in a night of hope and existential fear, knowing that the blood on their doorposts was the only barrier between them and the devastating death of the firstborn. They sheltered at home on the night of Passover, fearful and uncertain of the outcome. This is the pivotal moment of the narrative, as it is a pivotal moment for our country. Americans who believe in democracy and in the rule of law must draw on all of the best of our humanity to marginalize the destroyers. In our power, we must see that they are brought to justice. In our wisdom, we must come together and continue to build and rebuild our future. And in our humility, we must each determine as individuals which path we are best suited and prepared to take to make our contributions to that future. May the presence who guarded the Israelites on that terrifying night be with us, protect us, and shine a light to show us the way forward across the sea. Let us spend another moment or two breathing in our historical memory and breathing out our uncertainty at this moment. Let us breathe in our faith that we will meet this newest challenge, and let us breathe out the doubts that plague us. By way of benediction and conclusion, I would share with you this version of America the Beautiful that has been circulating. There is also a Jewish version based upon this rendition. In this moment, I found what I would refer to as the original, particularly powerful. It will take me just a moment to bring it up. God bless. God bless us all. May it be a week of health and of strength and of good things. Please, God. See you next week, for sure. And thank you.